Okay, so have you ever like stumbled across something and it just sparks this kind of like instant curiosity? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, well, wait a minute. There might be this fascinating connection between, say, the ancient Lakota wisdom right here in North America
Yeah.
and then the super rich spirituality of ancient Egypt, right?
Right.
It
Absolutely.
seems like such a leap, you know?
It does. It does at first. And I think that's part of what makes it so intriguing, right? Like it suggests that there's this like deeper current running through human spirituality, that maybe these seemingly really different cultures are kind of tapping into some of the same like fundamental truths about existence.
Right, right. It's like a hidden thread connecting them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So that's exactly what we're going to kind of try to unpack today. You brought some really, really interesting material. We're gonna be diving deep into the story of 𝗧𗧿𝗓𝗓, also known as Rising Morning Star, and the album 𝗧𝗓𝗓𝗓, Daughter of the Two Lands, the sacred duality of 𝗧𗧿𝗓𝗓𝗓 by TATANKA.
Yeah, this is cool stuff.
Yeah,
This album and We Ai's whole journey, I think, gives us this like really remarkable opportunity to see how the spiritual traditions of the Lakota people and then those of ancient Kemet, they've they've kind of intertwined in this really beautiful way.
right.
And it makes you think about how certain core human like understandings and longings and ways of being in the world, how those can kind of like echo across continents and across like the huge spans of time.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to be so interesting to kind of look at today. So let's start at the beginning. Who is 𝗧𗧿𝗓𝗓𝗓, this rising morning star? Like, what makes her such a compelling figure to kind of like center this exploration around?
So 𝗧𗧿𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓, her life is really like deeply rooted in her Lakota heritage. She grew up in 𝗧𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓. That's the Lakota name for the Black Hills, and as you know, that's a place that holds like immense spiritual significance for the Lakota people. And so her upbringing there was like profoundly influential in shaping who she became.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the place, but also like the people, right? Her grandmother sounds like she was like a key figure in her life.
Totally, totally. She was raised primarily by her grandmother, 𝗧𝗧𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓, who was this like really respected storyteller and medicine woman in the community. And she instilled in 𝗧𝗧 this really like core Lakota teaching that the heart is the center of everything. It's like the source of our spirit, the source of our wisdom, our ability to love, to connect. And this emphasis on the heart, it's something that like we'll see kind of running throughout our whole discussion today.
Right. So the heart being this really vital spiritual center in Lakota thought, the seat of wisdom, compassion. I think, like you were saying, that's something that we're going to keep kind of coming back to. What about her parents? You know, what shaped her from that side of her lineage?
Right. So her father was a warrior, but he passed away when she was quite young, leaving kind of this sense of a missing piece, in her early life. And her mother, she's described as this woman of quiet strength, someone who really taught her about resilience and how to kind of navigate, life's challenges with this kind of like inner fortitude.
So a childhood kind of like steeped in Lakota tradition, but also marked by loss,
Right.
but also the strength, the quiet strength of her mother. And then on top of that, these really powerful visions start coming to her. It's like glimpses of another sacred land, but one that she's never been to.
Yeah, yeah. From a very young age, I would have these recurring dreams and visions that would kind of transport her to this other time and place. She'd see these magnificent temples bathed in sunlight, this kind of like majestic river, flowing through this golden landscape, and then these really potent images of ancient gods engaged in this ritual of weighing hearts. And these visions, they were incredibly vivid, and they left this like lasting impression on her.
So like almost like another world calling to her.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But how did the connection to ancient Egypt, to Kemet, actually emerge from these very personal visions?
So this is kind of a cool part of the story.
Oh.
It happened in a way that feels kind of serendipitous. So an Egyptian scholar, he came to her village, and as he was, sharing stories about Kemet, the ancient civilization that flourished along the Nile and its history and its spiritual beliefs, something just like really resonated deeply within 𝗧𝗧𝗓𝗓𝗓. It's like his words were almost like echoing the very images that she'd seen in her dreams, as if like this long forgotten part of her was being like awakened.
Wow, it's like her inner world was suddenly finding this like external mirror, you know?
Right, exactly,
And
exactly.
this kind of sparked a quest for her to try to understand how these two seemingly different worlds, her Lakota heritage and this ancient knowledge of Egypt, how they might actually be connected.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, driven by these powerful experiences of her dreams and the sense of like recognition, she really embarks on this spiritual journey.
Yeah.
And she sought to understand, what might be the potential links between her Lakota heritage and the ancient wisdom of Kemet. So she delved deeper into Lakota spiritual practices, but she also like really dove into what she could learn about the lost knowledge of ancient Egypt.
And it seems like one of the central points of connection that she finds in both of these traditions really revolves around the heart chakra, the anahata.
Right.
Why is this particular concept so significant in bridging these two traditions?
So the heart chakra really acts as this powerful, like unifying idea in Wei's understanding, and also in the themes that are explored in the album that we'll talk about a little bit more later. But from the Lakota perspective, as her grandmother had taught her, the heart, it's not just a physical organ. It's the very place where the spirit speaks to us. It's considered this center of deep knowing, and the source of our connection to 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗪, which you can kind of think of as the Lakota embodiment of universal love and compassion and generosity. And it's a really like guiding principle for how one should live and interact with the world.
Okay, so how does that align with the ancient Kemetic understanding of the heart? Because it sounds like it's equally central there.
Yeah, absolutely. In Kemet, the heart, known as Ib, held this like equally like profoundly important significance. It was believed to be, the very seat of the soul, like the core of a person's being, their intellect, their emotions. And a central belief in their like afterlife beliefs was this ritual of the weighing of the heart.
Oh, wow.
So after death, the deceased's heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, who is the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order.
That's amazing.
And the weight of the heart would actually determine whether the person was worthy to enter the afterlife. If the heart was heavy with, wrongdoing, it wouldn't balance with Ma'at's feather.
Wow.
So they wouldn't, be able to pass on.
So the heart being like so central to one's spiritual destiny in both cultures. Like what does that shared emphasis kind of tell us about maybe like a fundamental human understanding that goes beyond, any one particular culture?
Right. Well, I think it really suggests that there is this kind of like shared, like intuitive understanding across cultures that a heart in harmony, a heart that's, balanced and virtuous, that's really key to living a meaningful life, a life that's aligned with truth and the greater cosmic order. So whether it's the Lakota emphasis on compassion or the Kemetic focus on a heart that's, light enough to pass judgment, both traditions kind of point to this profound importance of the inner life.
Yeah.
The quality of one's heart.
Right.
And I think it hints at this kind of fundamental human desire across cultures to live a life of integrity and to be able to face judgment, whether it's in this life or the next, with a clear conscience.
Yeah, and not to like get too sidetracked, but it's making me think about all the metaphors that we have in English about the heart. Like heavy heart or a light heart or like following your heart. It really is so central to how we think about, our own being. But okay, so we've been talking about the heart, which is clearly a huge point of connection. What about some of the other like specific philosophical or spiritual connections that Wei'aya has kind of like identified between these two traditions?
Yeah, so one that's really resonant is the link between breath and spirit.
Right.
So in the Lakota tradition, there's this deep reverence for the sacred breath, which they call Naye.
Okay.
And it's seen as this very essence of life, this vital force that connects us to the Great Spirit. And similarly, in Kemet, you have the concept of Ankh, which represents the breath of life. And the Ankh symbol itself, it's often depicted as like a key. And it kind of signifies this idea of eternal life.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just about like the physiological act of breathing. It's something something much deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Both traditions recognize breath as this fundamental link between our physical body and the spiritual realm.
Hmm.
You know, it's kind of like the animating force that sustains all living beings.
It's like the invisible thread that connects us,
Yeah,
right?
to the cosmos,
Yeah.
to the great spirit, whatever that is.
Another parallel that you pointed out, and I thought this was really fascinating, was the significance of the sacred earth,
Right.
and the cosmic order, and how that's kind of like embodied by 𝗧𗓻𝗧𝗪 for the Lakota and the Nile for Kemet.
Yeah, so these are more than just, geographical locations, right? They're really like the very foundations of their respective worldviews. They're so deeply interwoven with their spiritual understanding of the universe. So 𝗧𝗪𝗪, the Black Hills, it's like the sacred heart of the Lakota world. It's their place of origin. It's a source of spiritual power, and it's a landscape that's just like imbued with the presence of their ancestors. And then the Nile River, it held this kind of like comparable significance for Kemet. It was the lifeblood of their civilization, right?
Yeah.
Providing sustenance, fertility, and it had this kind of rhythmic cycle that mirrored their understanding of cosmic order and renewal.
And this really profound connection to the land, to that kind of overarching cosmic order, it really finds expression in the album itself, doesn't it?
Totally, yeah. So like even the album's title, 𝗧𝗪𝗪𝗪, Daughter of the Two Lands, it immediately like establishes this connection to sacred geography. And then like even as you go through the track titles, they further kind of evoke these landscapes, drawing these really powerful parallels between kind of like the spiritual energy of the Black Hills and then the life-giving force of the Nile.
And then there's this other kind of connection that you brought up, and I thought this was I don't know, I find it really interesting how you kind of like drew the comparison, because it's not a direct one-to-one correspondence, but it really made me think about like, okay, this underlying principle is so strong in both traditions, and that's the concept of the weighing of the heart in the Kemetic tradition,
Right.
and how that kind of resonates with the emphasis on Lakota virtues.
Right, yeah. So like you said, the Lakota tradition, it doesn't have this like specific afterlife judgment scene.
Right.
That's identical to the weighing of the heart, but there is this really strong and pervasive emphasis on living a life that's guided by virtues like compassion, honor, courage, truthfulness. And 𝗧𝗪 draws this really, I think, powerful connection here, suggesting that living in accordance with those Lakota values,
Right.
it cultivates what she calls a light heart. Like a heart that's unburdened by negativity and selfishness and wrongdoing. And that really resonates with the Kemetic ideal of a heart that would weigh favorably against Ma'at's feather.
Right.
Right. So the underlying principle in both traditions, it's clear, right? The way you live your life, it has these really profound spiritual consequences for your journey, whether it's in this life or beyond.
So we've been talking about all these different kind of like threads of connection, right, between Lakota spirituality and ancient Kemetic spirituality. And all of this is really kind of woven together in this album, in 𝗧𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪, Daughter of the Two Lands, the sacred duality of 𝗧𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪, and it's described as being more than just, like a collection of songs.
Right, yeah.
Like
yes.
what is it? What does it set out to do?
So the album is really conceived as this kind of spiritual narrative. You can think of it as a sonic journey that really embodies the sacred teachings of both the Lakota and Kemetic traditions. And it beautifully follows 𝗧𝗪𝗪's own personal quest to bridge these two ancient sources of wisdom. And so it's not just about, like intellectually understanding the connections like we've been talking about, right? But it's about actually like offering the listener an emotional and experiential journey, like a way to connect with these ideas on a deeper level.
So through the music, listeners can kind of like connect with this spiritual fusion.
Yes.
In a much more like visceral way.
Yes, exactly.
I like that. So what kind of soundscape does the album create? Like what can listeners expect to hear when they put this on?
Yeah, so musically it's really interesting. It weaves together this really compelling blend of rhythmic drumming, which is, so integral to Lakota ceremony.
Right.
And it's believed to kind of harmonize the energies of the earth and the human heart, right?
Okay.
And that's layered with these sacred chants that kind of echo the ancient sounds of Kemet, like the hymns and invocations that would have filled their their temples and their ritual spaces. And then interwoven with that are these really beautiful, like what have been described as like celestial harmonies.
Oh, cool.
So it creates this really unique and kind of transportive sonic experience.
Yeah, and even just looking at the track titles, you can kind of get these little glimpses into this journey, into these connections. Like
Yeah.
tracks like 𝗧��𝗓 or 𝗧𝗔𗓵𝗓 Sacred Waters. They just evoke such strong imagery.
Right, right. So 𝗧��𝗓𝗓, which just translates to day sun, it's kind of interpreted as this moment of like entering a sacred space,
Yeah.
and feeling that life-giving warmth and energy of the sun. And then 𝗧𝗧𝗓 Sacred Waters, which means sacred waters, it kind of evokes this feeling of being near, like, this pristine stream, right?
Yeah.
This place where the voices of ancestors are said to kind of like whisper through the flowing water, and it's this source of life and connection.
It's amazing how much like meaning can be packed into just a few words, right?
Totally, yeah.
And then there's these other tracks like 𝗬𝗓𝗃 𝗬𝗃 the Buffalo's Gift
Right.
and 𝗬𝗓𝗃 the Moon's Circle that so clearly speak to the heart of Lakota culture and symbolism. Like, what are those about?
Yeah, so 𝗬𝗃 𝗬𝗃 the Buffalo's Gift is it references sitting buffalo, and it's this really powerful acknowledgement of the sacred buffalo,
Yeah.
the animal that sustained the Lakota people and the enduring strength and spiritual significance that it holds for them. And then 𝗧𝗓𝗃 the Moon Circle, it speaks to this deep connection that's felt, under the light of the full moon. It's a time that's often associated with the ancestors and the kind of like cyclical nature of life,
Yeah.
death and rebirth.
And even a title like 𝗓𝗓𝗃 the Final Prayer, it suggests this sense of reverence and closure,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
like leaving with intention.
Yeah, so 𝗬𝗓𝗃, the final prayer, is really seen as this moment of offering gratitude and a final blessing, as one departs from a sacred place,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about carrying that experience within.
I love that. And going back to the musical composition, you were talking about how it's a harmonious blend of these different elements. Can you kind of elaborate on how these different musical traditions come together in the album?
Yeah, so like we were talking about, the foundation is the Lakota drumming,
Mm.
and that often provides, like a really grounding meditative pulse throughout the album.
Right.
It's often described as like the heartbeat of the earth,
Uh-huh.
And then layered over that are these melodies that are inspired by ancient Kemetic hymns and perhaps drawing on the pentatonic scales and melodic contours that would have characterized, their music. And so it evokes this kind of like sacred atmosphere of the temples and the rituals that would have taken place, along the Nile. And then you have this kind of like instrumental storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Where the soulful voice of the traditional Lakota flute, it kind of converses with the resonant tones of instruments that are reminiscent of ancient Kemetic harps. So it creates this dialogue between these two ancient sound worlds.
It really sounds like this album is more than just music. It's almost like a ceremony in itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And stepping back from the music a little bit, 𝗬𝗓𝗓 is clearly more than just someone who has like studied these traditions academically.
Right.
She actively embodies them, right?
Yeah.
And transmits this fusion. So her role seems to extend beyond just being a healer. Like how would you describe her role?
Yeah, I think she's really best described as like a guide.
Mm.
She's someone who walks between the old and the new,
Right.
and she facilitates understanding and connection between these seemingly different cultural and spiritual paths. And her dedication, it really manifests in a number of key ways.
So let's explore some of those ways in which she kind of like lives out this purpose. One of those is healing through sound and ceremony.
Right.
How does she go about that?
Yeah, so she integrates the Lakota tradition of drumming,
Yeah.
which like we said, is believed to kind of harmonize the energies of the earth and the human heart,
Right.
with the melodic and kind of spiritual power of ancient Egyptian hymns. So by blending these sonic traditions in her ceremonies, she aims to promote healing and balance within individuals and within communities. And she often like really focuses on the heart's energetic center.
Right. And then she's also deeply committed to education, to passing this really unique kind of like blended wisdom on to future generations.
Totally, yeah. I think a core aspect of her purpose is to share the knowledge and the insights that she's gained, from both Lakota and Kemetic traditions, and she sees it as really vital, to ensure that these ancient teachings aren't forgotten, but that they're kept alive, and made relevant for those who will come after.
That's beautiful. And then there's also mention of her work in reviving the divine feminine, honoring figures like White Buffalo Calf Woman and Isis.
Right. Yeah. So in her ceremony, she often brings together, groups of women to honor the sacred feminine principles that are embodied by figures like White Buffalo Calf Woman in Lakota tradition.
Yeah.
She's this pivotal spiritual figure who brought sacred teachings to the people, and then Isis, our 𝗧𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗧 in Kemet, right, who is this incredibly like powerful goddess of magic and motherhood and healing.
Right.
And so this focus on the divine feminine is intended to kind of restore a sense of balance between masculine and feminine energies, both within individuals, but also in the wider world.
Yeah, I love that. And then finally, this idea of dreaming the future.
Right.
It sounds so forward-looking, and intriguing.
Yeah, it is. So this aspect of her role, it involves really kind of tapping into her visionary abilities and seeking insights into potential future paths, right?
Yeah.
And essentially like bridging the wisdom of the ancestors with the possibilities and the challenges that lie ahead. So she kind of acts as this visionary leader, guiding her community towards a more harmonious future that's grounded in the enduring wisdom of the past.
Wow, that's a really beautiful like vision of what that could look like. And it seems like even her physical appearance is this powerful reflection of this cultural and spiritual fusion that she embodies.
Totally, yeah. So the way she presents herself is really this potent visual representation of her identity as this daughter of the two lands. So for example, she might weave, sacred Lakota beads into her hair alongside this deep blue lapis lazuli, which is a stone that was like highly prized in ancient Egypt.
Right.
Or her regalia might incorporate, symbols like the Lakota morning star, which represents hope and new beginnings, alongside the Kemetic eye of Horus, which is this powerful symbol of protection, healing, and royal power.
And does she carry like specific objects that hold meaning in both traditions?
Yeah, she might wear, for example, a beaded choker, which is a traditional Lakota adornment that often carries, symbolic meaning that's passed down through generations. And she might wear that alongside, an ankh-shaped pendant, which is, of course, that unmistakable ancient Egyptian symbol of life and breath, of eternity. She might also carry a bundle of sage, which is, sacred in many Native American traditions for purification. And she might combine that with myrrh, which is a fragrant resin that was used as sacred incense in ancient Egypt. And so it kind of symbolizes, the prayers and the rituals that connect her two worlds across time and space.
I love these details. It really helps to kind of like bring her to life,
Right, totally.
And she's referred to as Twin Star and Keeper of the Sacred Heart. Like,
Wow.
what's the significance of those titles?
So Twin Star, which directly references her Lakota name, 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧, this her role as this kind of guiding light, illuminating the connections between these two ancient wisdom traditions, and showing how they can shine together.
Right.
And then Keeper of the Sacred Heart, it really underscores, her central mission, which is to guide people towards, healing and understanding and spiritual growth through the wisdom of the heart, which is a principle that's, so central to both Lakota and ancient Kemetic spirituality.
So ultimately, what would you say is 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 like overarching purpose, like her core mission in the world?
I think her mission is fundamentally about reunification. and about healing. So she seeks to, to bridge divides, to heal the wounds of separation by really highlighting the shared spiritual truths that lie at the core of different cultures.
Yeah.
She strives to foster love and balance and truth as these essential foundations for both individual and collective well-being.
Right.
And she reminds us that the wisdom of the ancients, it still holds this profound relevance and power for us today.
Yeah.
And so her story is really presented as this inspiring example for all who seek to honor the past, but will also actively shaping a more harmonious future.
Now, you also shared another really compelling story with us, one that seems to kind of draw inspiration from Wiai's journey and these themes of spiritual fusion.
Yeah.
And that's the story of Wiana Hoda and Orchestra Americana. So how does her experience connect with this broader idea?
So Wiana Hoda's story, it offers this really powerful contemporary illustration of the potential and the impact of cultural fusion. So growing up in 𝗧𝗧𝗪, she felt this deep connection to the traditional music of her ancestors. But she was also drawn to a wider range of musical expressions.
Right.
And her discovery of TATANKA's Orchestra Americana, which is this ensemble that intentionally blends indigenous musical traditions with modern symphonic arrangements, it kind of opened up this entirely new, creative landscape for her.
Wow. So it's like a space where tradition and innovation can not only coexist,
Right.
but they can actually create something new from that interaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did Wiana become involved with the orchestra?
So despite having very little formal musical training, outside of her community, she felt this really strong inner prompting to audition for the orchestra. And during her audition, she played her traditional cedar flute and shared these melodies and rhythms that really carried the stories and the spirit of the Black Hills, And her music, it really resonated deeply with TATANKA, who's the conductor, and with the other musicians, and she was invited to join the orchestra.
And the orchestra itself is kind of portrayed as this really diverse group, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Bringing together musicians from all different backgrounds.
Yeah, it's intentionally designed as this remarkably diverse ensemble.
Bringing together musicians from a wide array of cultural backgrounds and musical traditions. So it's this living, breathing example of cultural fusion in action, where these different sounds and perspectives come together to create something that's so much richer and more expansive than anything they could have created on their own. Host